Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. If you're new here, our intention is to provide you with impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. This podcast is brought to you by Joanne's Place Health Foods, which is located in Peterborough and Lindsay, Ontario. My name is Marissa Laughlin. I am a holistic nutritionist and your host for the podcast. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. In case you missed it in our last episode or on social platforms, Joanne's Place is celebrating 45 years of business this year. Yep, 45 years of business. So incredible. We are so grateful to have been and will continue to be a part of your wellness journey over the years. Whether you have visited one of our locations, attended an event, listened to the podcast, or connected with us on social media, thank you for trusting and supporting us. Over the last 45 years, there have been so many trends that have come, gone, and even stayed. Now at Joanne's Place, we are always following trends because our mission is to support you along your wellness journey. So if you want to follow a ketogenic diet, we want to ensure that you have access to the best quality products to support your keto diet. Also, if you're a vegan, we do the legwork to ensure that the products we have on hand is the best option for your health. But the key point to mention here is the best quality products. Just because something is keto, vegan, or gluten-free doesn't necessarily mean it's the best quality or healthiest option for you. So for today's episode, I've asked Sarah Smeenk to join us again to talk about her experience navigating these trends as a Joanne's Place senior food buyer. Most people wouldn't consider the process of researching and reviewing products before they hit our shelves, but there is an extensive checklist that we consider to ensure that you have access to the highest quality products to support your journey. I'm going to let Sarah talk about that a little bit later in better detail, but to start, let's welcome her back onto the podcast. Good morning, Sarah. How are you today? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm great. Loving this fall weather. Even though it's rainy, fall's my favorite season.
Oh, me too. It's so nice.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the beginning with you and a little history lesson. First and foremost, you are the granddaughter of the founder of Joanne's Place, Joanne Fillets, and you were essentially born into this wellness industry. But obviously over the years, so many things have changed, but there's been some things that have stayed the same. So we'll get into that in a minute. But how about for our listeners, you just give us a little background about yourself. When did you start working at Joanne's Place?
I actually started working at Joanne's Place when I was 9 years old, working alongside my grandmother, Joanne. I'm the first grandchild, so I got to take advantage of some of those things that perhaps not all of my, cousins would have got to do. I could just sit beside her back when Joanne's Place was still in the little white building beside the big house that they used to live in. So it was much smaller than it is today. So that's where I learned to count back change and met lots of customers and then just progressed from there.
That's amazing. So what was your first job title at Joanne's Place?
Officially, because I started working when I was so young, and then I worked every job really in the Lindsay location because I went to high school in Lindsay. So I worked there doing everything, working cash, writing orders, breaking down cardboard, packaging. When we used to do packaging at each store, now it's done at one location. So I've done a little bit of everything through the years. So officially, first job title would have been probably sales associate. I worked the floor. And then I've done all areas of the store since then and now to where I am today as a buyer.
It's awesome. Like Sarah and I actually share like a space up in our Lansdowne location. So our desks are really close and we have really great in-depth conversations about trends, products, like what's upcoming. So we just thought bringing this conversation to the podcast would be so beneficial for you guys to tune into this and just see both perspective in terms of trends, like my perspective as a nutritionist and then also Sarah's perspective as a senior buyer who's constantly following these trends and looking at these new products that are hitting the market that are suited for these trends. And we kind of want to debunk some of those things today because there is a lot of misinformation I think that's important for people to know. So before we get into the trends topic, let's talk a little bit more just about what it means to be a senior food buyer. What does that job entitle for you?
So essentially, I would be responsible for ordering all the food that you'd see on the shelf in any location. So our head office, our Lansdowne location, is where all deliveries come, and then we do our own internal shipping to the Water Street, Lindsay locations. So as the senior food buyer, I would be responsible to order existing products you see on the shelf, but also to analyze, go over, decide what new products that we bring to the store when it comes to food. Now, with that being said, I work with two other great buyers, as well as Marissa does a little bit of buying herself. So as a team, we meet every 2 weeks, and often we'll talk about all new products there, whether it's food, supplements, cosmetics, and we kind of give our pros and cons and almost sell each other first before it even is a thought to come into the location. So we have a conversation there first. So really, when it comes to what comes into the store, there has been some kind of characteristics of products that have never changed from the beginning. Certified organic being one of them. That's always been from the beginning something that's been very important to Joanne, the founder, and then her daughter and son-in-law that took it over as kind of a number one criteria for all products. So whenever possible, that is the most important thing to us, as we believe that is what's absolute best for our bodies. And I know we've talked in other podcasts about what certified organic means, so that's probably something you could listen if you're kind of unsure. So that would kind of be first, as well as, I want to say a close second, but also very important would be Canadian made. Obviously local as possible, wherever possible. That's also very important to us as a local business, to support other local businesses, to support local farms, other local products wherever possible. So I see more and more of that becoming accessible. Obviously, too, in Canada, we have 4 seasons, so some things are not always available all the time. So that is also something that we need to be mindful of. Like for produce, for example, we can get local in season. Obviously, out of season, things do have to get imported because we still want to ensure the certified organic wherever possible. So there is other things that would go into food. Obviously, taste is very paramount as well. More so maybe than other areas, food is what it tastes like is very important. So we know that if something tastes good, people will buy it. Packaging is a big deal because, as we know, the population can be very visual. I mean, I'm sure we've all bought something just because we like the way it looks, right? It doesn't maybe not always taste great, but it looked cool, right? So with food, those things definitely come more into account. And then too, what's become very big for especially all of us label readers is all of the certifications that come aside from certified organic. You're seeing almost everything that becomes trendy then becomes a certifying symbol on a box. So whether that's organic, vegan, keto, paleo, all these things that we're now seeing. So those factors definitely go into the process, and as much as possible we try to have the staff involved with product education meetings where we get to sample stuff. And even if I get given a sample, for example, I got some coffee the other day. I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm a tea drinker, but I'm surrounded by lovely coffee drinkers.
That's me.
So Marissa being one of them, she's my go-to, is ensuring that they get to try stuff and then they tell me with their honest opinion, and a lot of decisions get made collectively with that as well. So I think it's a kind of a group effort, which makes it even more fun to do this job.
Yeah, and to be, honest about that process as well too. Like, there are thousands of products that are being made in the health industry, and it is continuously growing, and there's always going to be businesses that are trying to have their most exclusive formulation or offer something that's a little bit different but in the same category. So we'll say like keto for an example. So there's always someone trying to get the next best product out there, but it's really up to all of us just to navigate like what's true to that, what is actually the best quality for you to buy that's supportive for your health, because we definitely can't have every product on the market, and we don't want to have 15 options for you to try to decide on. So when we go through that process to pick those products for the shelf, it really is a detailed process, which is appreciated for everybody to do.
And one thing I did mention certified organic, but then I didn't go into just ingredients as a whole. That is huge, very huge for us. We look at every ingredient right down to fillers to ensure that what is in the product is the best on the market that we can offer. And sometimes products come to market that we would introduce, and then a little bit down the road, one with cleaner ingredients comes out, and we are not opposed to then taking one off the shelf to put the most clean product on the shelf that we can find. And that is crucial for us and very important, so that our customers can trust that when they come into our stores, what they see on the shelves are checking those boxes, and they can trust that they're great for them to be purchasing.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Is we want to make it easy for you when you're coming in, so that you're not having to do all the legwork to navigate what the best option is. Even you may have tried something else, and you approach us and we look into it, we might be able to find a better quality product. So what is the first trend you can ever remember coming into the wellness industry?
I was thinking about that on the drive over, and I don't know if this was the first, but the one that pops into my mind that I can remember at a young age being popular was the low-fat trend. Low-fat dairy, low-fat cheese, low-fat milk, low-fat everything. Interesting enough, at the time, that is what people believed would make them thin or help them lose weight. Because often what I see when it comes to trends is it also closely ties to weight loss, typically.
Yeah.
Like I know there is trends in flavors and trends in types of foods that aren't necessarily tied to weight loss, but I would say that predominantly when you see a big trend or way of eating or lifestyle is attached to weight loss. So the low fat craze was pretty big.
So crazy to think about now that we're like in the trend of everything being keto or high fat. It's just like the exact opposite. I mean, what we know in terms of diet is like when you're following some type of diet, something has to be compromised. So at that point with a low fat, like they weren't talking about carbs or sugars or those types of things, whereas now that's like the main conversation with keto. It's just so interesting how quickly things can change and evolve, really.
Well, even people's understanding, there was a good chunk of time where people believed solely what made you overweight or gain weight was fat, and we know that is not true, that all fat is not the same, that your body needs fat, good healthy fat.
And I still think that some people are in that mindset of wanting low-fat products. But when we look at low-fat products, let's use like butter to margarine for an example. I think this is the easiest one for people to relate to. People will substitute with margarine, which is just scary to think about that people still use margarine as a low-fat option. But when we think about what we talked in terms of ingredient list and making sure that that's the cleanest ingredients possible, like we don't have margarine at Joanne's Place. We have some dairy-free vegan alternatives with the mindfulness of what the ingredients list are, but butter is primarily what we're selling in for that type of category. Minimal ingredients, whole foods that are added in there, no thickers, no fillers, no flavors, no things like that. Whereas margarine is primarily hydrogenated oils, which is highly, highly inflammatory. And a lot of people I know I see in clinic that are still using margarine on a regular basis for cooking, baking, on toast, those types of things. But they have all the other side effects. Although it's low fat, it's high inflammatory, highly processed oils, artificial, everything that's added in there. So that's a scary trend, and it's so interesting to see when people finally make that connection and go, butter, so simple. So simple.
Oh, and I think too, it's with something like low fat, or really any of the trends we may be talking about today, anything that alters the food from its natural state should cause you to pause and ask some questions. So I think that it's great to see consumers asking those questions now and realizing, when you see the ingredients and it's something that's not real, maybe we shouldn't be having that, right? So that was around for a long time though, that way of, and like you said, there's probably people who ate that way their whole life, and it's very difficult to see it differently today, right? To go to a whole fat milk, for example, instead of skim. And I was just saying to Marissa when we were chatting about this, that even some of the low fat products we used to carry, say skim milk and 1%, we had to take off the shelves because our customers just don't buy them, because that mindset has, I think, gone, like we said, completely other way now.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that change. And it's also interesting to see, who knows, 10 years, maybe it'll flip the exact opposite way. Let's hope not. No. But you never know. So what was the craziest or most unrealistic trend you've seen in the wellness industry?
That's a tough one. I do think, crazy or unrealistic, I think that is a little bit different for every person. That's kind of the biggest maybe message to get out through this whole conversation, is just how we're all unique individuals and our bodies are unique. What's crazy and unrealistic for me may not be for someone else. I mean, I do think the low fat trend was unrealistic and a little crazy for our industry, even from the get-go. I remember talking to people, 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, and that was never an accepted trend truly in the health food industry, because we knew otherwise how important fat was, right? So I think it's interesting today. I'd say what's crazy and unrealistic is more widely spread because we have social media. Because I remember certain, crazy, like anything, for example, that was on Dr. Oz, right? I don't know how many years ago that is, but anything that was talked about on there, instantly people would rush to the store to get. So the medium at which people got their information has changed so much that I'd say there's way more kind of crazy concepts out there today, because someone could, post online that this, celery juice, drink that for 2 weeks and you're going to lose weight, and people think I'm going to try that. So there's so many different ideas and concepts out there that people are trying that may seem a little bit crazy, because there's so much more information at your fingertips. So I think that's a bit tougher to answer, in a sense that, because I think what's unrealistic, like for me personally, I tried keto for 3 weeks and it was the worst experience of my life. That's very unrealistic for me. I just didn't do well. My body didn't accept that well. And that, whereas I dropped it down, to paleo, which is just a little less restrictive, and that is amazing for me. So I think what's crazy or unrealistic for me, like maybe different. Like, what about you? What do you think? Like, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think it's important what you said is, like, everyone is so unique, and that's why I think it's so important to work with a practitioner if you're looking to change your diet, or have someone to help you navigate, because what Susie is doing is not necessarily the best for you, because everyone is so different. But yeah, I mean, I've seen obviously so many different trends. I've done a lot of different trends in terms of like researching, but one thing that I will say I struggle to kind of stand behind is the intuitive eating movement. And not that this doesn't have a really great foundation. I think the message for this is really great, and just in terms of being in tune with your body, but there's not a lot of people that can make that connection to what their body needs. Instead, they're just, I'm intuitive eating. I'm eating this because this is what my body's telling me. And it might be, eating ice cream and chocolate and chips and all those things. And not that those things are terrible for you, but to use an excuse of, I'm intuitively eating to enjoy those things, it's something that I struggle to really stand behind personally. I think if you're in tune with your body, you're able to see those cues and say, I may be suffering with some nutritional deficiencies if I'm having these cravings, or if I'm eating these certain types of foods. So that's a challenging one for me. Also, strict juice cleanses, really challenging. And I've done strict juice cleanses for 3-5 days. Also terrible experience. Now, don't get me wrong, I love fresh pressed juice, I love greens juice, I love to supplement those as like a boost of nutrients if I'm feeling run down, or I just looking for like a little hit of energy. But fiber is probably one of the most important factors in your diet, and you are not getting any of it through juice. So juice cleanses are a little challenging for me to get behind. Now, with that being said, I think there's some therapeutic sides to doing a juice cleanse very short term. There's the master cleanse, which is kind of similar, not juice, but kind of similar to therapeutic, but very hard this day and age to maintain that. Busy lives, stressful lives, season change, anything that's cold you're having in the fall and winter, it's very challenging in the digestive system. So those are ones I would say are, hard to stand behind. But as you said, paleo, like that's probably the number one. I don't even love to call it a trend. I think it's just like such a natural way for people to eat, to just be mindful of how much, not necessarily carbohydrates, because you can still have potatoes and sweet potatoes and squashes, but just more of the grains that can be very irritating for the gut lining. But I would say paleo is one that I find people do so well on. Yeah. And I think it's something that you can follow more on a long-term basis without having too many restrictions. You can still have coconut sugar, maple syrup, all those natural sweeteners that you can't necessarily on keto. Yeah. So many trends over the years, Do you feel that there has been some that have been very tried and true and it's stayed over the years that are still, we'll say trending today?
We call it keto today, but I think that would, like the Atkins diet, which was been around for forever, really, as long as I can remember, which is essentially a high protein, high fat diet. I think the concepts maybe not as restrictive as they are today when it was called that. I think the concept of eating good healthy fat, higher protein, have been in the health food industry since the beginning and will stay because that is essential. Yeah. Our body does need those things. Vegetarian, vegan, I know they're different, but the vegetarian diet, vegan diets, I know have been around again since I've been in this industry, not as prevalent, not as popular perhaps as they are today, but I think part of the health food store concept started because those people wanted those products, right? Like tofu has been around from the very beginning, so it was a lifestyle for a lot of people, just not maybe as popular as it is today. So even us talking about paleo, I know that this maybe isn't as popular, but the blood type diet, which has also been around for a long time, is partly why I personally eat paleo. Is when I remember reading the book, the blood type diet book, that made the most sense to me when I read about so I'm an O blood type, and that is a paleo diet essentially for O's. That's what they're suggesting.
I'm an O too.
Yes. Yeah. So that made the most sense, and I always felt the best when I did that. Now again, it can be very restrictive in certain areas as well. Like I shouldn't have vinegar, and sorry, I can't have salad dressing without vinegar. It's just not happening.
So all of those trends we just talked about that have been around for a long time, obviously they're still very current. But as a buyer, like what is the top products that you're seeing come through that are more trendy?
It's funny because I would say so keto products and vegan products, which are two like polar opposite trends, which is just so funny that they're both so prevalent right now in the world, but heavily even in the wellness industry. And I was reading a stat about keto that I think pre-pandemic 3% of the population was following this form of diet, and it rose to like 7% post-pandemic, and looking to trend up to 10% of Canadians, which very well can be a lifestyle. I mean, we call these trends or even diets, but I mean, if you do it right, it can be a lifestyle. Yeah. Something that happens forever. So it is funny that it's those two, and I say vegan, really plant-based products and keto products are still the two heavily trending in the industry for new products. And it doesn't seem like that's going to change. It seems like those two lifestyle choices are going to remain prevalent and continue to rise even.
Which is so interesting because when we talk about products and top quality of products, those two category of products are two of the most processed food product companies that we see come in. Mm-hmm. Vegan options and keto options, because we know people want certain types of food without having to compromise the taste and texture of it. So what I mean by that is, people want a hamburger, but they want it to be plant-based. People want cupcakes. They want it to be keto. Not that you can't have those things, but what comes with that change of ingredients is a long list of ingredients as well. So I'd love to talk about that. Can we talk about Beyond Meat?
Yes.
Like that is probably one of the most top examples I give to people. Is there is a lot of great vegan burgers on the market. We have the Soul Cuisine ones,
TMRW.
Yep. Hillary's. We've got lots of great options, but we get asked all the time for the Beyond Meat burgers. So as a purchaser, why would you not think that that's a great option?
Yes. So Beyond Meat is something that you will see both in kind of mass market as well as the health food industry. And I do think that hit every shelf because it was so heavily marketed. Their marketing team, kudos, right? Like they did a great job at getting a product out there that kind of took, I want to say take advantage, because it kind of did take advantage of the rise and popularity of plant-based eating, because it looks like beef, smells like beef, kind of
tastes
like beef. Yeah. People were excited about that, but it's interesting that you said this is the tough thing that I struggle with trends, because if it's something that you just want to try to lose weight because it's an option that's being presented to you, versus something you want to do in your life to make better choices. Because the thing is, it's funny, I talk to like vegans who have eaten this way for decades. Beyond Meat did not appeal to them because they don't care to have a hamburger. They gave up meat. They don't eat meat. Yeah. So hamburgers were associated with meat, right? So it is such an interesting mindset of these products that are coming to the market that mimic what people are trying to give up. So we don't have Beyond Meat on our shelves per se because the ingredient listing didn't meet our standards. Yeah. There's a lot of ingredients. So then this is, for example, there's a lot of reasons why people don't eat meat, but this one specifically, when you're making, like in our household, certified organic beef hamburgers, it's literally a pound of beef with some seasonings, turn them into patties. It's really one ingredient with spices, right? Beyond Meat has 20 ingredients?
At least.
So to me, that is more important than the trend. Again, like we said, there's a lot of reasons people don't eat meat, but that example specifically, swapping out something that has one or two ingredients to something that has 20, some of them synthetic, some of them not real,
genetically modified, fillers, preservative, artificial flavors,
so many things that aren't necessary to make a hamburger. So for us, it solely didn't meet the ingredient list. Also, it's American. Yep. Whereas a company like Soul Cuisine is Canadian, TMRW Canadian, which, as I mentioned previously, we will always choose those products over outside of Canada. US is great still compared to maybe going overseas or whatnot. But if we can get a Canadian made product, that's where we will support first and always. But it is ingredients. So whether it's plant-based or keto products, that is a very real issue right now, is ensuring the quality of ingredients.
So keto, I've seen actually a lot of keto products that have artificial flavors added into them. Also, we know that some of the sweeteners that are used in keto aren't always the best option. So what some people might not actually be aware of is, where erythritol and xylitol come from. Can you dive a little bit into those two sugar options?
Because when we know with keto, you can't have any sugar. So what they're substituting is these sugar alcohols or byproducts, often created in a lab, unfortunately, right? Because that is not the natural state of any sweetener. So erythritol specifically can be a challenge because primarily it will be made from corn, which is highly genetically modified, unless it's non-GMO. So as the keto trend continues, as I see it is, we will likely see more non-GMO erythritol on the market, but it is still, as we said, a product that is not in its natural form. Therefore, the body has to process it in a different way. Yeah. Right? So xylitol as well, it can come from birch tree, which is what we try to source it from, or it can be from corn. So we try to stay away from corn derivatives unless ideally certified organic, which is rare, I'd say, but at least non-GMO, because corn is one of the most heavily genetically modified ingredients on the market. That kind of downside with the health factor, which is really, for us at Joanne's Place, more important than a trendy product, more important than just having the products that a customer asks for, is the quality of those products. Because that is important to us, that we're offering our consumers products that will enrich their health, not potentially damage it.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, not all companies who are making these products, their top priority isn't always going to be your health. Just being mindful of that. So let's just jump back to the vegan trend real quick here. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's anything that our listeners should know specifically about following this trend? Whether it be they need to supplement with something else, they just need to be mindful, which we talked about already, of additional ingredients in their foods. Any tips you can give to our listeners?
The vegan trend is a challenge, I'd say, because there's so many reasons why someone could choose this lifestyle. And, I respect all those choices. But however, very important to know your body, what your body needs. If you are choosing this trend or this lifestyle, is to ensure that you're getting what your body is asking for, what it needs. So obviously a lot of vegan products could be lower in some proteins. And so truly understanding what it means to make a complete protein, for example. Like even I talked to my children about, one of them came home and said their so-and-so friend became a vegan. Okay, so she's 11, my daughter's 11 years old. So she's like, maybe I want to become a vegan. Okay, so then we talked about what that would mean for you to stop getting protein from a meat source and switching to a plant-based. So that's beans, that's rice, my children like rice, but the beans thing set them off a little bit. Legumes, talking about what that is. And after the conversation, they thought, maybe I don't want to, right? Now, that's 11-year-old. But it's being mindful that we are ensuring our body's getting what they need. So just to be looking at the products, ensuring quality ingredients, that you're getting what you need. So like some of the things that you could be getting from a meat product, that you're still ensuring you get that through the food you eat, or having to supplement, right? That even keto diet, there may be things that, because they're not eating as much fruit or they're not eating as much fibrous foods, well, then you need to make sure you get that, right? Because your body will lack. So you're trying to do something good for whatever reason in the trend you choose, but then you could be hitting some gaps because of that. So I think education is so crucial for any of these diets, to really know what you're getting yourself into before just starting it because it's a trendy diet on TikTok, right?
Absolutely, I agree. And yeah, I think in terms of like making sure you're filling those gaps, like I think as a vegan, like most important, like get a good quality vegan protein powder. Like at least you're getting 20 grams of protein in a serving like that. That's so versatile. You can cook with it, bake with it. You can obviously make smoothies, things like that. Like just get a basic flavor when you can use it in so many different options. I think is so important. And a lot of them will have some extra, B vitamins and things like that from the vegan plant sourced protein. So I think a protein powder is really helpful for vegans. And then keto, yeah, like you said, fiber is so important. Like so many people come in and say, I am day 7 on the keto diet and I have not had a bowel movement in 7 days, which is like so many levels of wrong.
Yep.
Like no detoxification. You are trying to excrete buildup of fat in the body. Well, where do you think it's going to go if your bowels aren't moving? You're trying to digest so much protein, so much fat, and it's just totally a mess. So fiber, so important when you're on the keto diet. I mean, psyllium husks, chia seeds, flax seeds, those are all great, keto friendly options, just to make sure that your bowels are staying regular as you go through that transition.
Absolutely. And even talking about vegan too, things the listeners should know, when you're eating a lot of fruits, vegetables, grains, to ensure wherever possible that it is certified organic.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be interesting. I've talked to a lot of people in the industry about this move to plant-based eating. The amount of glyphosates that are in these products, if you are solely consuming conventional versions of these and not certified, like the amount of pesticide, herbicides, when you're solely eating plant-based, could very much be increased. To be very mindful about that, especially families whose children are also eating that way, because what we do know is glyphosates bioaccumulate. So if you're eating heavily sprayed items right from a young age, that it can affect that. And I know it can be a controversial issue with the whole certified organic and what people think, but if you just think that through and what's, again, to educate yourself on what goes on to crops, how it's sprayed and all of these things, that when you're eating primarily those products, to really be mindful of it being organic wherever possible and non-GMO, which certified organic is already non-GMO, but at least, because that's where the genetically modified industry started, was produce, right? Fruits, vegetables, and who knows what they're moving to with grains and whatnot. I mean, the awareness is out there now. I know General Mills has made a statement about, I think Cheerios came back as one of the most heavily like highest quantity of glyphosates, and what they're linking that to, especially with children. So just to be really mindful of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the price gap is shrinking when it comes to organic and conventional if people really just looked at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In, I guess it was April, we had a podcast together with also two other lovely ladies, Rebecca and Heather, and we talked about certified organic. So I'm going to leave that link in the description so that you guys can check that out, because we really talked about what that means in terms of your dollar that you're voting with to choose more organic, and also the benefits of choosing organic: higher nutritional value, better digestion, like Sarah said, like glyphosates being sprayed on produce, grains, all those types of ingredients to keep up with the demand of people buying them, and also to withstand, droughts and all things like that. But we talked all about that in the podcast, so definitely go check that out. I'll leave it below. And then in a couple weeks, we have another podcast coming out that we're actually talking specifically about glyphosates. Myself and Autumn, who also is a Joanne's Place employee, so stay tuned for that, because she's going to go into great detail about glyphosates as well.
And same too, I think with keto, is like we just talked about, that there would be a healthy way to do this and an unhealthy way. I've had a few customers, even friends, talk about the foods they eat on a keto diet. Well, I eat cheese and deli meat, so a lot of packaged stuff. You can eat keto and still eat a lot of fruit, like a lot of vegetables. The quality of meat that you're consuming, the quality of fat that you're consuming. With all these trends we talked about, there's a way to follow these trends or eat this way and maintain your health, and then there's ways to do it where your health could deteriorate.
Yeah.
Essentially. That's, yeah.
And I think that it obviously comes down to the education piece, but thinking just whole foods. Yeah. Like, I think that's most important in any trend or diet you're following, is thinking like, what foods am I consuming on a regular basis that are whole foods, meaning it's in its natural state, it hasn't been changed, hasn't been ground down, hasn't been anything but just as it is. How many processed foods am I eating on a regular basis, regardless of what trend that you're following, or whatever diet you're following through your lifestyle as well.
And that's the key, I think, too. As much as we'd like to believe that all companies want us to be healthy and have our best interests at heart, they're also about making money.
Yeah.
So when you see trends really take off, like the plant-based and keto, you're going to have products that target those lifestyles that are not that great, but because they have keto certified on it, that anyone potentially doing that diet could be drawn to that product. So, I mean, I think the tried and true read your labels will be a trend that should stay here forever, right? That label reading became probably much more prevalent in the last decade or so, where that's always heavily encouraged. And I'd say that that's something that will stay, because no matter what you're doing, that's something we can all do. We can all take a look at the ingredients and truly understand what each of those things are.
Absolutely. And I think label reading was kind of something that people didn't want to do for such a long time. Like, it was a trend in itself, really. And then it was let's stop counting calories, let's stop counting fat, let's stop counting protein. And to a point, like, I think it's important to not be like, oh, this is 200 calories, I'm not going to eat it. It's like debunking the rest of it. How much fiber is in it? How much sugar is in it? How much protein's in it? There's a difference there than just looking at a calorie per se versus all the other macronutrient or micronutrients that are in it as well.
Absolutely.
So label reading, I think, is important. But do you think that there's another trend that is, sustainable for people to consider with their diets?
Again, I think that the two big trendy ones right now, keto, plant-based, are sustainable if done properly.
Yeah.
Also, I do think that because there's such a connection between food and emotion, psychological, mental health, that anyone should be careful when doing anything very restrictive. Because it's like that saying where it's like, tell someone they can't do something, that's all they want to do, right? So, I mean, even in my own personal wellness journey, I've kind of struggled with weight most of my life, that I find that when I do anything where I say I can't have something, that makes it less sustainable for me.
Yeah.
Personally. As opposed to really the age old calories in, calories out. Really, that's how weight is lost, by consuming less calories than you're burning, period. Doesn't matter what trend you're following, what diet you're doing, doesn't matter what you're doing. That is still the way our body works. That will never change. So I think like the idea of calorie counting is great if you struggle with that, right? You struggle with making choices that will lead to weight loss if that's what you're trying to do. So I think that is a sustainable way of, for sure, a trend that will stay is, I mean, there's tons of apps for calorie counting. So the calorie deficit kind of trend, the more you move your body, the more you get to eat. The less you move your body, the less you should be consuming. That is really that simple. So that way of looking at something, no matter whether you're doing keto, vegan, paleo, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight, like, calorie in, calorie out is like science. That's standard practice for so long. But to build off that, what we believe that is important is also the quality of those calories, because obviously 100 calories of cereal versus 100 calories of a chicken breast looks so different for your health. So when we're saying in terms of looking at calories, it's, how much food can you consume in a day that is so calorie rich and nutrient rich that is just going to be so beneficial for your energy, for your hormones. And that's really important to think about in terms of the diet you follow, whether it's so restrictive that you're not getting enough of those nutrients. Like, I know for myself, like on TikTok right now, it's a lot of fitness accounts. So 100 calorie snacks, 100 calorie this, but it's like, plain rice cakes, which is pretty freaking boring to me, if you ask. And just like simple little like 100 calorie packet things. Whereas you're like, well, if you had like a cup of berries or like some almond butter with that apple, it's just so much more filling, sustainable, and way better for your blood sugar, for your insulin, for your digestion. So there's, looking at what you're putting into your body and asking yourself, is this providing fuel for my body, or is this creating a fire, whether it's inflammation or digestion and all of those things. And it's so interesting because pretty much on every podcast, I always ask somebody that I interview, like, what type of like dietary suggestions do you make based on the topic that I'm asking, whether it's bone support, energy, stress. And they say, eat foods that make you feel good. So you're able to digest them easily. You're able to use that energy as fuel. They're suggesting, look at your carbohydrate intake. Is it balanced with your protein intake? So it's not recommending crazy keto or vegan or those types of restrictions. It's, making sure that you're getting food into your body that's creating, good energy for yourself.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important to kind of take away, is that still, and I think, in our industry, we'll always come back to ingredients. And like you said before, whole foods. Really, the foundation of health food is whole foods and foods in their natural form. That nature has perfectly designed a lot of foods, like an apple, right? Like you said, if you just take the juice away and throw out the rest, there's a lot of nutrients that you're getting rid of in the flesh, in the skin. So these diets through that whole food lens will go a long way for anyone who's kind of making that change, versus just, seeing someone on social media lose 30 pounds and they eat Wendy's hamburgers every day, or just take the bun off, whatever it may be, that is an unrealistic picture of the keto diet or keto trend. So I think it's mindfulness for sure when it comes to these decisions.
Yeah. So from a nutrition standpoint, some advice I could give to you listeners would be, understand what your body requires. So if you're an active person, if you're a stressed person, I think somebody would follow into either of those categories. Use food as fuel. That is, I think, for like the first line of support for your body, the foundation. It's supporting your immune system. It's supporting your energy, your mood. Use food as a tool, because if you're not using your food as that foundation, then you have to use other things like supplements or other types of support, whether it be like therapies or things like that to support your body, which I think are also very important. But I mean, if you're constantly putting, let's say, junk into the body, like it's going to catch up to you, and you're not going to get as far in your wellness journey as you'd like to if you can't get that foundation right. So look at what you consume on a regular basis. Find a balance. I really strongly promote that 80-20. Like 80% of the time I am, trying to follow, say, a paleo diet, but on the weekends, I like So Delicious vanilla ice cream. I like chips. I like those types of things, but it's got to be in moderation, and you've got to look at food as your first line of defense for everything else.
Well, and I think to make, like you said, the 80-20 is a great way of looking at it, and make that 20% also count. Like, think about what your most favorite treat is, and have a good quality treat. I think that definitely is a trend that came from the pandemic, from some articles and things I've read, that people realize that the quality of their food is important, because a lot of individuals, because restaurants were closed, started cooking from home, realizing that they felt better, that they had more energy, maybe less of an inflammation response, and if that's what they were struggling with. So realizing how much they could do at home, how much they could make for themselves, and then if they were going to indulge, that still be a healthy indulgence, we'll say. So being willing to, have a piece of chocolate cake, but make it the best chocolate cake that you can find, right? Yeah. With, real ingredients and something, being able to make it yourself makes you feel really great, but even mixes that are organic, or, we just got a line in that has paleo of mixes, that you can still have some of those indulgences, but they can still be with great quality ingredients that still taste amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that will be interesting to see that kind of trend continue with, as we hopefully get to post-pandemic time, people still cooking for themselves, realizing that they can really only control their own health.
Yeah.
Right? That's one thing that I've always known, but has definitely become more prevalent in the past, couple of years, especially with children, that how important it is ongoing to just really take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And like you said, that first line of defense is the food we put into our bodies.
Yeah.
And that no matter what lifestyle choice we make, the quality of the food that we consume is truly solely in our control.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's a choice we can make for ourselves.
And we talked about this in the organic podcast, about how some people see organic food as an investment, really. But what we know is that, we've said this before, the gap in terms of conventional versus organic, the price point is much different. I actually did a YouTube video in comparing it, and it was like 22 cents difference to make a meal organic versus conventional. So that gap is closing, which is fantastic, but also like it might mean that you have to adjust something in your budget to make that work. And you talked about that is like primarily what your budget is organic food for your health, your children, your husband. So it is possible. It just, you have to be advocating for your own health, because you're the only one, in control of that.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. And I think it's great we do have so much information at our fingertips now that it is very easy to see someone else live a life or a trend and think that that's exactly what I can do. But like we've said, advice for listeners is know your own body first. Really take the time to know that. I like, Marissa as a nutritionist, seeing someone like you, naturopaths, people that can look at your whole way of life and really assess it and help you get to where you want to be, is just so important. Because I think that people can be led astray easily by other people's lifestyles, not understanding that perhaps that person is a chef living in their home, or, all the things that might make it easier. But.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. I think it's important to just know that you have, resources, whether it is coming into Joanne's place, looking for the best quality products for you to suit that transition phase, because it's obviously not going to happen overnight either. Like if you're somebody who eats, say muffins every morning for breakfast, and you want to change to, say, keto, for example, like that's a hard transition to make, but we could maybe find you something to help in that transition as well. So Sarah, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast and sharing your wealth of information. It's so great having conversations with you all the time.
Thanks for having me.
I think our listeners will really love this episode. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again, Sarah, and thank you guys so much for tuning in for the episode today. Just giving you guys a reminder, we have a few more weeks left of our 45-year celebrations, so we still have lots of giveaways, different promotions, and exciting things happening in store. So be sure to visit us at each location and be following us on social media. All right, that wraps up today's episode, and you guys know what to do next. Be sure to hit subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss a notification as soon as a new episode is released, and be sure to continue to share on social media that you're listening to the Wellness on Purpose podcast.